I still remember back in 2013 when I was sent to a military survival course. The whole training lasted 3 weeks. The final week was the hardest, because we weren't given any food at all. Instead, the instructors drilled us on how to light fires without matches, how to locate clean water, how to set simple traps for small animals like squirrels or rabbits. But the truth is, most of us simply went hungry. The snow was deep, the cold was biting, and constant movement only burned more calories we didn't have. After a couple of days, the hunger pangs set in hard. By day 3, we were starving. That's when one of the instructors tossed us a live rabbit. We didn't have weapons, so he looked around the group and asked bluntly, "So who's going? To kill it?" No one wanted to volunteer. I scanned the faces of the others and saw the same hesitation reflected back. The instructor wasn't joking, though. Someone had to do it. Suddenly, everyone's eyes turned toward me, as if being a Marine automatically meant I killed rabbits for sport. So I swallowed hard and said, "Fine, I'll do it." I'd never killed anything bigger than a bug before, at least not with my bare hands. I'll spare the gruesome details, but I had to snap its neck. 2 other guys were shown how to skin it. The instructor removed the head, and then he asked the group, "Who wants the eyeballs?" One of my buddies had told me before the course that eyeballs were packed with electrolytes. I'd been cramping badly and I was too hungry to second-guess the advice. So I raised my hand. Everyone looked at me like I was insane. I figured we'd cook them somehow, maybe boil them first. Nope. The instructor tossed me the rabbit's head and said, "Go on, just suck them out." There are things I never imagined myself eating, but hunger changes everything. That moment taught me how quickly desperation strips away hesitation. And when you read war history, you realize that starvation pushes people much further than you'd ever expect. In the end, we're not so different from anyone else. When you're at the edge of death, survival sometimes demands unthinkable choices. This episode explores true accounts of cannibalism during wartime. Disturbing, tragic, and yet real. The mist before you is heavy, leaving you with only 2 choices: step forward into its shadows or retreat. What lies within are stories that challenge everything we believe about morality, blending fact with nightmare. It is a fog of war, a space where hunger, cruelty, and desperation collide. Before we continue, a quick thank you to today's sponsor, BetterHelp. Serving in the military can be the toughest thing a person ever goes through. Physically exhausting, mentally draining, sometimes soul-crushing. And strangely, when you get out, you think you'll feel relief. Yet many veterans discover the opposite. Civilian life can feel harder. You wonder why you can't function as well in everyday situations, even though you've already overcome so much. I didn't realize for years that much of that battle was happening inside my own head. Thoughts I believed were truths about myself were actually lies I kept repeating. What helped me was having someone trained to listen, guide, and show me tools to reframe those thoughts. That's where BetterHelp comes in. It's online therapy designed to be simple and accessible. You just fill out a short questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist in days, and if it doesn't feel right, you can switch anytime at no cost. With over 7,000 reviews and a 4.3 rating on Trustpilot, thousands of people have already found help this way. Go to betterhelp.com, wartime stories, or use the link below to get 10% off your first month. Remember, asking for help is not weakness, it's courage. Now let's step back into the story. 5 minutes out, boys. Keep the channel clear. Alpha Flight, swing right. Bravo, take the left. Targets should be in visual range. Let's make this quick. Roger that. Lead 1 locked on Alpha. Bombs ready. Remember, if you get shot down, put as much distance between you and that island before you bail. Rescue standing by, but only if you can hold out long enough. Copy that. This is going to be a rough ride. Fighters, once we break, form a high cover. Keep enemy planes off us. And if any of you believe in God, now's the time to pray. Countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2. Break. By mid-1944, the Allies held the advantage in the Second World War. In Europe, German forces were being squeezed, pushed out of Italy, beaten back in France, pressured by Soviet armies to the east. In the Pacific, Japan was retreating as American forces won one island after another. A crucial step in the campaign was Iwo Jima, a tiny island just 760 miles from the Japanese mainland. It was the perfect base for launching bombing raids deeper into enemy territory. To cut it off from reinforcements, the Americans targeted Chichijima, another island nearby with 25,000 troops, a weather station, seaplane base, and, most importantly, two powerful radio relay stations. On September 2, 1944, 8 planes set out from U.S. carriers, 4 Hellcat fighters and 4 Avenger bombers. Each carried 500-pound bombs. Among the pilots was a 20-year-old lieutenant named George H.W. Bush, the man who decades later would become the 41st President of the United States. As the planes approached, anti-aircraft fire filled the sky. The Japanese had outdated guns, but sheer volume made up for it. Bush pressed on through the explosions, his bomber shaking violently as shells ripped into it. Smoke and flames licked at the fuselage, but he refused to break off until the bombs were dropped. His radio man lined up the target, released the payload, and scored a direct hit on the transmitter below. There was no time to celebrate. The Avenger was falling apart. Bush turned toward open water, trying to get far enough from the island to bail out, but the fire spread fast. He ordered his men to jump. Radio man John Delaney made it out, but his chute never opened. The rear gunner, William White, was trapped inside and went down with the plane. Bush himself bailed last, striking his head on the tail as he leapt. His parachute tore, but he managed to land hard in the Pacific with only bruises. Clambering into his inflatable raft, he scanned the waters. No sign of his crew. Hours later, circling American fighters fended off Japanese boats until a submarine, the USS Finback, rescued him. Of the 10 airmen shot down that day, Bush was the only one saved. The others would face a fate far more horrifying. Captured American pilots knew death often came quickly at Japanese hands. The Samurai Code saw surrender as dishonor, so prisoners were frequently tortured or executed. But on Chichijima, cruelty reached depths no one imagined. By late 1944, food supplies on the island had nearly collapsed. The Japanese garrison survived on handfuls of rice each day. When 9 American flyers were captured, they were brutalized for weeks. Finally, General Tachibana ordered their execution. One by one, they were beaten, bayoneted, and beheaded. Then the unthinkable happened. Officers carved out their livers and ordered them cooked. At a grotesque banquet, Japanese commanders were served human flesh. Some refused to touch it. Others, like Rear Admiral Mori Kunisui, eagerly consumed it, even organizing a second feast later using the flesh of other prisoners. After Japan's surrender, investigators uncovered the atrocity. Tachibana and several others were tried in 1946. Cannibalism wasn't even technically a war crime under international law, so they were charged instead with preventing honorable burial. Tachibana and 4 officers were executed. The rest served short sentences. For decades, the U.S. military kept these files sealed. Even George Bush never learned the truth of what befell his fellow airmen until reading James Bradley's book Flyboys many years later. The revelation haunted him for the rest of his life. Most cases of wartime cannibalism were born not of cruelty, but starvation. The 1930s Soviet Union was ravaged by Stalin's policy of forced collectivization, which stripped farmers of their land and livestock. Food output collapsed. The Ukrainian famine, remembered as the Holodomor, killed an estimated 3.5 million people. Families resorted to eating grass, bark, or anything they could scavenge. But countless reports emerged of parents killing their children or desperate mobs preying on the weak. Police records from Kiev in 1933 mention receiving 10 or more reports of cannibalism each day. The famine revealed how hunger can dismantle even the strongest moral boundaries. When Germany launched Operation Barbarossa in 1941, their forces smashed deep into Soviet territory. One key target was Leningrad, today St. Petersburg, a city of nearly 3 million and a hub of Soviet industry. Encircled on 3 sides, the city was subjected to constant bombing and artillery fire. Rather than storm the city, The Germans chose siege warfare, starvation as a weapon. By late 1941, bread rations had dropped to just 125 grams per person per day, often padded with sawdust. Winter struck, freezing the city, and supplies barely trickled in over the frozen road of life across Lake Ladoga. By early 1942, thousands were dying each day. The dead lay in the streets unburied. Families, desperate beyond words, began consuming the bodies. The first official cases were recorded in December 1941. By early 1942, they had multiplied. NKVD police reports detailed mothers killing children, neighbors preying on each other, and corpses butchered for meat. Authorities classified offenders into two groups: corpse eaters, who consumed those already dead, and person eaters, who murdered victims for food. The first were usually jailed, the second were executed. Most cases, however, were driven purely by survival. A haunting children's rhyme from the time captured the horror. Sung to the tune of "Mary Had a Little Lamb," it told of carrying body parts in a basket and cooking them for dinner. Such morbid songs reveal how normalized the unthinkable had become. Despite unimaginable suffering the city endured, citizens planted gardens between bomb craters, anything to produce food. Soviet forces slowly pushed back the Germans after their victory at Stalingrad. Finally, in January 1944, the siege was broken after nearly 900 days. Of the 2.5 million residents trapped at its start, only about 700,000 survived. Emaciated, hollow-eyed, they staggered into freedom, living testaments to endurance in the face of hell. The siege of Leningrad remains the deadliest in history. Over 1 million Soviets and 500,000 Germans died. And hidden within its tragedy are the darkest truths of survival. Cannibalism is a grim subject, one that makes us recoil. Yet history shows us again and again, hunger strips humanity to its core. Whether through cruelty, desperation, or sheer will to live, people throughout war have crossed that terrible line. Before we finish, let me lighten the mood with something far less grim. Years ago, while stationed in Okinawa, a group of us Marines took a trip to Tokyo. We toured museums by day, hit karaoke bars by night, and spent mornings recovering in the hotel's hot baths. One younger Marine, though, had an early flight back. He came stumbling in drunk at 4 a.m., barely awake. In the morning, we found him at the airport, barefoot. Turns out he lost his shoes in the hotel and had to sprint through Tokyo in his socks, board trains, and finally reached the terminal shoeless. Security wouldn't let him fly without shoes, so he had to buy a $400 pair at a luxury shop just to get on the plane. Later, we discovered another Marine had accidentally taken his shoes back to Okinawa, thinking they were his. He never paid him back for the $400. To this day, I'm pretty sure that grudge still burns. Thank you for listening, for supporting this channel, and for keeping history alive, even the darkest parts of it. Whatever you're facing in life, remember, survival sometimes demands strength you don't realize you have. Until next time, stay safe.